know, I just...
Downstairs smoke.
Yeah, I need to call my daughter.
So my father and I still operate our organization together.
Yep.
And so collectively, we have 18 restaurants, and we're building our 19th one right now that'll open up. So my dad started 30 years ago. You know, a lot of his coworkers thought he was crazy. Hard road initially, but you know, it's paid off for him and as a family legacy as well. We believe that if we take care of our people, that they'll take care of our customers. Mm-hmm. What I realized, a lot of times it wasn't my idea. It was the way I would approach it.
Wow.
I don't think my purpose is to run a McDonald's or to flip hamburgers or to do anything. I think my purpose is to impact lives in a big way, to help people become their best. You have to get there by changing your mindset, usually with small steps. Most of the things worth doing in life do not give you instant gratification. So my hard days at McDonald's, many times I wanted just to leave, you know, my heart, and it wasn't even the work, it was actually some of the relational conversations, you know, like you said, within the family, like within my managers, you know, I'm like, I don't need to do this.
Right. I could do anything else in the world.
Right. But sticking with it, 10 and 20 years later, all of a sudden one day you wake up and you're like, look how far I've come.
Buckle up. This is What the Hell Do I Know with JB.
David Costa.
Hello, good morning.
Pleasure to have you on the show today.
Yeah, thank you.
So you're from Florida originally.
Yes, I
was. It's Panhandle area too, right? Hello? Yeah, I know. I just...
Downstairs smoke.
Yeah, I need to call my daughter because I have no clue.
We paused as Danielle checked with our daughter to make sure all was okay. Sometimes life hits even when you are in the middle of a podcast.
She's on spring break.
Yeah.
So. Okay, so I think there is no active fire. We just had our daughter was at the house and she just walked around. So I guess malfunction from the system.
Okay. All right, we'll put it as a false alarm. No fire department will be dispatched.
Okay.
Stay safe, please.
Thank you. On the show, I'm looking forward to diving into your story. I know that you really were pretty much Florida, Northwest Florida primarily, but I think your dad was in the Air Force, you said?
Yeah, he was in the Air Force, and so we moved around when I was young. I was born in Wichita, Kansas, and then we settled in Northwest Florida and been here ever since.
Right. You got a degree from University of West Florida. Then you did a little bit of work inside the business. About 10 years, is that right?
Right.
And then went back and got your MBA at the University of Florida. I think that's kind of incredible, getting your MBA after some business experience. And you said that you thought that kind of formed maybe a more informed position in the MBA, or?
Yeah, it worked out well because it allowed me to be able to go in and kind of understand business, work through a lot of challenges that, you know, you're trying to overcome when it comes to building a business, growing a business. And, you know, I was completely focused on McDonald's as a franchisee at that time, and then getting my MBA, then I ended up, you know, being able to just learn a lot of new things and meet a lot of people that were doing other businesses. So it just kind of opened up my world to how I can take some of their tools and go back and bring that into my business.
I think that was fantastic. And that's what we're going to dive into, your story. And we're hopefully dive into a little bit of all of it, like a smorgasbord of what makes David Costa tick. But I thought about you the other day in preparation for this, as we were driving down the interstate and we were looking for places to eat. You know, all these exits, you know, there's exit signs, as we all know, that show lodging, gas, food. But from miles away, I could see the golden arches coming, and I would know that a McDonald's was there. And you and your family have been in McDonald's franchisees for, I mean, how many years?
Yeah, so my dad started 30 years ago.
Wow.
You know, he was able to they were offering an early retirement program for the military.
Right.
So he got out after 15 years and decided, you know, not to take the next rank, but to jump into something. And, you know, a lot of his coworkers thought he was crazy. They're like, you have 5 years left, you should do that. And, you know, he was like, no, this is what I want to do. I'm ready. And, you know, it was a hard road initially, but, you know, it's paid off for him and as a family legacy as well.
How old were you when he did that?
I was 13 when we got our first restaurant.
Okay.
And we actually were living in Northwest Florida, and they offered us several different restaurants, you know, in Louisiana, some other areas completely not even close, and then we ended up settling for a deal in Mobile, Alabama.
Thank you so much for watching and listening today. One thing I really want you to do, and I know this because I talk to my friends, and they'll tell me all the time that they saw something I did or they watched a episode, and they'll tell me, but they're not subscribed. And I appreciate you trusting us with this hour and a half episode, but subscribe for me. It is a free way to support what we're doing, and I am honored that you put your faith and trust in me for this time. And so I hope that you enjoy it, and I want to do my dead level best to bring on some of the best interviews possible and hopefully ask thought-provoking questions. So, but subscribe for me, and it's a great way to support, a free way to support what we're doing. Thanks so much.
So we lived there 3 years when I was going to high school. Went to 3 different high schools, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
For him to, so it was his first McDonald's, and you're saying that McDonald's essentially approved your family, your dad, to be a franchisee.
Right.
And then they offer you options of what's coming up in new build, or I guess you could buy other franchisees.
Yeah, so generally they won't give a new franchisee a new build.
Okay.
Because it's not a proven concept, and it usually takes more funding to kind of get that going.
Okay.
So you generally would buy a restaurant that's for sale already.
Okay.
And so there was limited options, and so we said we'll buy the one in Mobile. I was
Closer.
in middle school, I think, at the time.
Yeah.
So we did that, and then moved there, and then I actually worked for my dad from day one in the restaurants there. We had one restaurant for that time period.
One restaurant,
Right.
and you worked in the restaurant, I guess, right at that point.
Yeah, so I would go with them in the summers. We lived about 30 minutes away. We lived in Fairhope, Alabama.
Yeah.
And then we went, commuted back and forth, and then before I could drive, I would ride with him, and then when I turned 16, I would drive there, go to school, and then I would come to work afterwards. I would help build the schedule. I'd work drive-through, whatever was needed. So, yeah.
So what's it like working at McDonald's?
For me, over the years, it's changed. It's changed for a few reasons. One, my role has changed, and what I do now is different than what I did then. And then the other part that's changed is just the restaurant industry in general has changed significantly, right?
Yeah.
And you have a number of different types of competitors, and you also have a change in the way that we operate our restaurants. And so we do when I first started, we actually you would make sandwiches in advance, and you would put them in a bin, and they would sit under a heater, essentially, before you'd serve them. And then now we do what's called a made-for-you system, where everything is made on a prep line, as you order it, especially for you. So I think that and then we've obviously added a lot of products. Sure. We've done a lot of things in culture to be relevant, as far as how do we also, meet the needs of our consumers and our fans, and be able to change things up. So it's a lot of fun, but it's a lot of hard work, and it takes energy and perseverance, for sure.
So but over a 30-year span, your dad getting this first restaurant, you've been able to see this kind of arc,
right,
of the fast food restaurant industry. And that's interesting, the fact that it was at one time a pre-made, and then now it's made for you. Mm-hmm. What are some of the biggest changes that you've seen over your 30 years in your industry?
What I would say is just, as the world has changed, that we've seen the restaurant industry just go back and forth on what you're looking for. But I think for us, we've worked hard as a McDonald's brand on ensuring that we're having quality food, because I think years ago the perception maybe wasn't that right. Mm-hmm. And because our food is offered at a good value and quick and easy, sometimes that perception's not there. So we've worked really hard to showcase what our vendors do, and the farms that we have our potatoes on, and how we're able to function in those ways to have 100% pure beef, and how it's sourced. So I think we've had to make shifts in how we're communicating to customers, what our marketing looks like, and then also what products we bring in. We tried to go on the extreme health route and serve things like fruit and yogurt parfaits and salads, and then we said, hey, our customers really want a great burger with fries, and how do we offer a balanced meal and option to them as well? And then the other thing that's changed significantly is, in America, we're consuming a lot more chicken than we used to, believe it or not. So we actually, are one of the largest purchasers of chicken and actually apples, believe it or not, for our apple slices in our Happy Meals. So we made those adjustments to say, hey, we know chicken's big. We know we want a healthy balance for kids and their Happy Meals. So we've had to just ebb and flow with that.
Interesting. Yeah. So those have been changed. I've also noticed AI sort of deal coming in for you guys. I've seen even just newer stores. I don't know if that's AI or just automated.
Yeah.
I've noticed where I've walked in and I have kiosks now where I order my food, I pay, which quite frankly doesn't bother me once I, learn the kiosk and understanding how to do it, which is, I mean, if you had an iPhone, you can figure that out.
Right.
But knock that out, order, pay, and then my order comes at a window and, it says my number. It's, I guess it's less hands-on to that degree, other than drive-through probably is pretty similar to what you would expect from drive-through.
Yeah, so I think what you're identifying is another major change that's happened more recently in the world when you think about delivery.
Yeah.
And you think about how we interact with brands on devices. My kids would much rather order their meal on their phone than have to talk to the person at the front counter for some reason.
Right.
And so we actually have like the most app users of any restaurant brand across the world. I think it's like 150 million, some large number. And so our app has become that central place for us to be able to make sure that our customers get the best deals and can get their food quickly. So the kiosks are available too, but our in-store traffic of people using the kiosks, sitting down, is actually marginal in comparison to our drive-through business and our delivery business.
Really?
Yeah.
So people are in the delivery business. Is that through a third-party delivery, right? With DoorDash or something like that? I mean, you don't have, McDonald's people driving out.
So we use DoorDash, Uber Eats, Grubhub for delivery, and then what we'll do is they can order through our McDonald's in the app, or they can do it through that third-party app.
Oh, wow, and it presses out to them either way.
Correct, yeah.
Wow, that's smart.
Yeah, so that works well.
That is a whole business. So that is, America has gotten to where we don't go into stores anymore.
Right.
We are a convenient society for sure.
Yeah.
That is very interesting. I mean, it's not just McDonald's. I think that happens with groceries.
Right.
That happens with other food items. I mean, I sometimes even buy my shirts and T-shirts and things of that nature just through Amazon, or I've seen it in my Instagram socials, and I'm like, oh, that looks nice. I'll hit the button right here and order it, and then a few days later it shows up at my house. I mean, retail I think is even taking a little bit of hit through that delivery sort of sir.
Yeah, I would say so. A lot of them are trying to obviously keep up with that. Obviously, Walmart, has their deliveries where you can get anything delivered quickly now, and you can pay the extra fee for it to be really fast. And, But for us, it's been a huge thing for our customers. It was something we were initially uncertain of how it would work out, and it's just been fantastic. We had a very large order the other day of people just, I think they ordered 50 sandwiches and several things together for a large group setting, and it worked out really nicely. So it's been a journey for us to meet the changes that our consumers are looking for and that our guests want.
Sure.
But it's been one of those things that we've been able to stay ahead of it and work well. And then the loyalty piece, as well, has been important. So, a customer can go on their app, they can immediately get a free sandwich after they've ordered certain number of sandwiches, and they can track it all right there. So it becomes fun. And then we've been able to do it with some of our activations that we've done, whether it's through Monopoly or upcoming promotions that we have too.
Yeah, so that's promotional. Before we move forward in some of the other nuances in operating a franchisee like this, we talked about your dad 30 years ago getting the one, and then we kind of jumped through that with some of the changes as you've seen the arc to, so we're kind of jumping around a little bit. But what I want our audience to understand is your dad didn't just stop with the one. You haven't just stopped with the one. How many franchisees do you have now with restaurants, I should say, do you have now?
Yeah, so my father and I still operate our organization together.
Yep.
And so collectively, we have 18 restaurants, and we're building our 19th one right now that'll open up in May.
That's amazing. And you also work directly with, you're part of a team that works directly with corporate McDonald's,
Right.
correct? In trying to help reshape what McDonald's does and to stay culturally relevant, I guess, so to speak.
Yeah, so my role on that team is it's called the NFLA People Officer, and it's an internal group that works with McDonald's Corporation executive team to help craft and make the best decisions and to be able to work together to bring the right things to light. And we provide that restaurant experience. So as the restaurant operators, 95% of McDonald's restaurants are operated by independent franchisees.
True North Pest Control. You guys know how much I love family-owned businesses. And these guys are a family-owned business. The reason why I love family-owned businesses is because they live where they work, they play where they work, and they care about the communities that they're involved in. True North is all over Central Florida, the Panhandle, and the entire state of Georgia. But they live in these areas. And I'm telling you, when you invest in them, not only are they going to give you great service because they care and it means something to them, they're going to continue supporting the community around you. And I've seen it time and time again. And so give them a call. Tell them JB sent you. TrueNorthPest.com. My friends at Floors.com would love to get a call from you. They're great folks. That's FLOORZZ. They've got all the floors you need for any new build or remodel. They have designers on staff that you can give them a call and tell them your project. They will work through with it and make sure you are taken care of. I love my friends over there. Tell them JB sent you. Floors.com, FLOORZZ.com. Right.
So our objective is to make sure that we're sharing that information with McDonald's. So my goal is to talk everything people. So training, HR, hiring, those type of things.
Which I think is super important to, I love the fact that McDonald's is even looking at that. I think every organization, that the bigger you get, the more disconnected you can be from your actual customer.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's really important that they listen to the boots on the ground, so to speak. And that, because one thing earlier, we've met before and we've had a chance to just kind of go through things. One thing that I thought was pretty interesting is how much you care about your employees.
Yeah.
And how much, and that you can, because a lot of times, you look at folks that work into the industry and they get in there and they're, running the fry station or building the hamburgers or whatever it is. And you just think, and it is, I guess, kind of an entry-level workforce sort of, but there's that you could move inside the organization, I guess, so to speak. Is that available? What does that look like? Have you seen that happen inside the McDonald's organization?
Yeah. So first of all, knowing that, working in any restaurant is a challenging job, right? We believe that if we take care of our people, that they'll take care of our customers. So living in a, high traffic tourist area, my number one challenge is always to make sure that I have enough people and that they're taken care of and that they're trained and able to do their role. So the funny thing about, a restaurant industry is a lot of it's just perseverance. Can you make it through the tough days, right? And so, no matter what, I'm working on some things, helping my employees get out of being unstuck. And so when we look at that, if I can help them get unstuck in things that might be holding them back, especially in their personal lives, and even their mindset shifting within the business world, then they can do anything with McDonald's. So, a small example is if there's a situation in a restaurant and you can keep your cool and not get elevated, then you're going to go so far with us. If you can show up on time, you can look sharp in your uniform, then you're going to go far with us. And so what I've been working with people on and what my team does is we set them up for, different development opportunities. So we have a pathway, and we put in every one of our crew rooms that you can become a crew member to a manager to a general manager within a year. And then we have a pathway beyond that, too. You can go further and be able to work for McDonald's Corporation or grow up within the executive roles in my company. So there's a neat pathway. And the cool thing is we'll actually train them fully on it. We've got training processes to go to Hamburger University. And then we also work with them internally on how to develop themselves. So the neat thing that I like is you can actually do anything within McDonald's. You can have it as a part-time job while you're trying to get a career, or you can go beyond that and make it a career yourself. So we're able to work in both couple places.
What success stories have you heard at McDonald's? And aside from you and your dad, I mean, your family is a success story in the franchisor route. But from starting in, kind of at the bottom, what success stories have you heard of that McDonald's has had from the beginning to getting into higher up? What sticks out for you?
I mean, there's so many neat stories of seeing people that have a 40 or 50-year career.
Really?
And when we go to a convention, you'll if you started as a crew member, then you'll wear a badge that says started as crew.
Wow.
And and then they'll ask a question, how many of you started as crew? And you'll see more than half the audience raise their hands saying that they started as a crew member, and that's how they got this career.
Wow.
Now, obviously, there's a pathway that you can get your college degree or be in another industry and come over, right? We're always looking for great talent. But, on the corporate side, there's a lot of stories of people that have moved their way up. And in fact, our national field president, she began at a McDonald's in the Philippines, where she was living.
Really?
Yeah. And she tells this incredible story of how she was able to move through the ranks. And she's actually retiring this year. But she has just a neat story. Another just, local story of one of my friends is a financial advisor, and he's someone that worked alongside me as a crew member.
Okay.
Putting stock away, or unloading trucks and working in the kitchen. And, he travels around the world today with his family. And, he got some great starts from McDonald's, and he talks about that, how his time at McDonald's there.
I love that, because I think it's almost like what it is, what you make it, I guess, so to speak. The idea that you can, in your head, if you think that this is just a job to get you through a time period, like you said, part-time, maybe it's for another career, then it can be what you want it to be. But if you really enjoy what you like, or you see opportunity, you can still achieve it. And that's pretty interesting. One thing that I've noticed too is at McDonald's, if I get a McDonald's in Florida, or I get a McDonald's in Maryland, or I get a McDonald's in California, it's the same Big Mac.
Right.
That is universal. I've seen that copied in other fast food restaurant industry, but I feel like you guys may have made that a standard where everybody else maybe had to keep up.
Yeah.
Because I don't feel like I walk into McDonald's and go, well, this is totally different.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, that's based on that franchising system of a couple things. So the first thing is systems, right? You have to have those systems. You have to have world-class training to make that happen. And then the other part of that is the follow-up part. So the standard that we're held to as franchisees, there's processes that are put in place to make sure that we are upholding our end of the deal as a restaurant operator. So that's an important piece of it, is how do we make sure that we're doing that. But it's been highly successful in that way, and able to grow into one of the largest restaurant brands in the world by doing that. But it doesn't come with a lot of follow-up and a lot of business practices that make that happen.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. Yeah, right. It's not like just it's not happenstance that I can have a Big Mac in one place and a Big Mac in another. And it's down to even, I don't feel like I have too much sauce in one place, or too many pickles, or not enough. I mean, it genuinely feels like if I eat a Big Mac in South Florida, it's going to be the same in Maryland, or Delaware, or Texas, or wherever. So that's pretty significant. Tell me about this hamburger. You mentioned Hamburger University. What is that?
Yeah, so Hamburger University in the United States is housed at McDonald's headquarters in Chicago, Illinois. And the idea is that you would go through several other classes that are building you up as a manager that are localized. Those are also standardized classes across the United States, and in many cases across the world. And then once you've been through those and you're ready, then you would go to Hamburg University, which is a course that's held there, and it's setting you up to essentially lead at the highest level you can within a restaurant. So a lot of it is based on leadership and mindset. And then part of it also focuses on some of the core elements of how we operate the restaurants. But a lot of that you should already know before you're getting there.
Yeah.
So it's designed to help people, get that additional training to help them lead at a higher level.
Very cool. That's a great way to invest back in folks. So before I get off kind of like the corporate McDonald's and that track, I do want to say, and I feel like my audience would be remiss if I didn't talk about it. But what the heck? And listen, I can cut this segment out too if I have to. But what the heck was the CEO doing with the whole hamburger eating thing on Instagram? Is he going to redo it?
Yeah. So it's amazing they call it the CEO wars that started.
Yeah.
And my Instagram feed started filling up with all the because I was like searching it, so
yeah,
it was filling up with all these like really tiny brands, like a little chicken brand or a little hamburger brand, and the CEO was emulating our CEO.
Right.
And so I was like, it's incredible the number of people. Obviously, it started with Burger King and Wendy's, but it was just amazing to see what people did. Now, to be honest, some of the things that were said about our CEO, I just didn't think were appropriate because he is who he is. And if you look back at a lot
I didn't think it was that bad, by the way. I didn't think it was as bad as what it was made out to be.
And I think the thing is that when you look at what he was doing, he's done many of these videos.
Okay.
And the idea is, let's hear straight from the CEO when a lot of other restaurant brands, you never even know who they are.
I thought it was bold move.
Yeah. So he's being himself and he's not a social media influencer. So you're not going to get this, totally different perspective. You're going to get, this is who Chris K is. And and I've met him many times, and he's a great guy. But I think when his intentions, obviously, are to share what he's seeing, and I think, to me, the way I look at it is, in many cases, PR like that we might seem as bad, I actually thought was great.
Sure.
Because it was really funny because there was a video that some influencers made that was like a joke of like looking at what Chris K would be, and then they showed the behind the scenes camera people and what they might be saying. Obviously they were mocking, but it was funny because that's what is that? That's the biggest form of flattery, right? So I don't think he'll redo it. I think he's going to keep being himself.
Just move on, and next thing's the next thing.
Yeah, and I think he's proud of the food that we serve, and we've had tremendous success with the Big Arch, so it's worked out well.
I thought that was hilarious because it really caught on, and then you started seeing other brands, even the bigger brands that were like, well, we're going to do ours, and I think Costco did their hot dog one, which I mean,
right. Yeah.
I think if you go to Costco and you need the hot dog, then that's fine. I mean, it's good times. But I just thought it's easy to piggyback on it for sure. Yeah. I did, what is it? No press is bad press is kind of the statement to a degree. That I thought that blew up, and that was so interesting. So 30 years in, you and your dad still are together working the franchises. How is it working in family?
Yeah, so I'll start with now. We're in a transition phase, and if you think about it, in the beginning, my dad owned the large majority of our restaurants.
Sure.
I was able to slowly get 1, and then 2, and then 3.
Okay.
And then we kind of got to parity where we're both about half the organization.
Okay.
And then he sold off a few restaurants a couple years ago.
Okay.
And then now we're transitioning the other restaurants over to me over the next 2 or 3 years while I'll buy him out essentially of his share.
Sure.
So we're kind of on that. We're on the passing of the baton piece.
Yep.
In the beginning, my dad was teaching me everything he knew, and he was upskilling me on how to lead. He was teaching me what he learned in the military. And so, it was great. I mean, I was just head down working hard, right? And then as I became my own person, right, got a little older and said, hey, here's some things I think we could do. My dad and I would go back and forth a lot, and both of us holding the same values. We've never changed our value structure of what him and I each believe, but just maybe some different ways of getting there, So we would choose, okay, we'll go this way here and this way here.
How was that? Because that can be very difficult.
Yeah.
If your father obviously was accomplished in the Air Force and the military, is a leader.
Yeah.
You can tell he's a leader. The fact that he wanted to get out early. You know, people were telling him 5 more years, et cetera, and he knew that there was a pathway for his family. And so that's that spirit of entrepreneurship and that drive of leadership is not always in everybody. And so the fact that he did that, but then here, fast forward where you're learning, and then you start having ideas. Was he originally open to that, or you know, because that isn't always. I mean, good leaders should be open to it, but it's not always easy to hear that somebody else has better ideas than me.
Right. Well, and you know, I always like to be truthful in those things because I think it can help other people.
Sure.
Because I know so many people, even in McDonald's and other places, that have family businesses. So, you know, I don't have anything to hide when it comes to that. It wasn't easy every day, right?
Yeah.
What I had to learn myself was my dad's always been a kind and extremely generous person. And what I had to learn for myself was, you know, I had to be more humble coming to him because in family, you just kind of say what you feel. Where when you're working with someone externally, you might be on guard or you might be in performance mode, right? So what I realized, a lot of times it wasn't my idea. It was the way I would approach it.
Wow.
So I had to learn, how do I approach my father in a respectful way that makes him understand and feel valued so that my idea will have some weight with him.
That just feels like a Dale Carnegie deal, right? How to win friends and influence people.
Yeah.
That doesn't actually feel, and I love how you framed that, that when it's family, we feel like it can be raw. Like we just say what we want to say, we say how we feel, because it's family. They're going to love me anyway.
Right.
But when you're working with family, it is still, how would you approach it?
Yeah.
That is so unique. What's interesting, when I was younger, I learned a very similar lesson. We were a family-owned business too, and my father-in-law. I remember one time I was coming to him with something, and he had such great patience with me. I think he was very frustrated in how I approached him. He was very frustrated in what I was saying to him, and I remember he just kind of was like, "Jason, think about if you worked for someone else, and this wasn't me. How would you say it?" And he essentially told me, like, how would you approach that person? And it made me sit back and go, you know, I don't think I'd be as aggressive. I think that I would actually try to win them over. I would want to show them why this would work, not just because I think it should, you know? And it really made me think. So I love how you framed that. That's so true.
Yeah. What you're saying makes total sense. We just, you know, I use the example with my kids, you know, do you talk to your teacher that same way? Because they'll be like, what do you mean I'm not being rude? I'll say, okay, say that to your teacher and see what happens. You know, and so, but they don't even think that until you put it out there. And I think we do the same thing for ourselves. And even in the leadership groups I'm in today, we still need like a facilitator or some of those reminders sometimes in how to approach, you know, difficult conversations, or if you want to get your point across, how do you do that? Now, if you're naturally a salesperson, and there's a lot of people, I think they're even born with that like ability to just be really friendly and outgoing and help you feel that way. But if you're not in that way naturally, but you're trying to do business or really anything in life, honestly, anything you're trying to accomplish, you really, and that's me, I have to be in tune to that. I have to say, okay, how do I approach this in a way that is not me just trying to be self-serving or me just thinking I'm right, you know? It may not even be self-serving, it may just me wanting a certain way. And so we worked through a lot of challenges that way, and, you know, we also both learned that there's not one right way. You know, there's two different ways this could work, but we always stuck together with it. Whatever decision needed to be hashed out in the room, you know, we still left approaching our organization with unity, saying this is the direction we're going. Even if I didn't like the decision, I would still make sure that I, you know, didn't let my employees know that.
Well, there's something to be said for that. I do think that when you have a spirited debate inside of a decision-making room, and I think you should. I think people should be challenged. I think processes should be looked at. Systems should be discussed. How you treat people, whatever it is, all those things should be challenged so that you get to the best possible decision. But I think once you step out of that decision-making room, you've got to be unified.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there is zero chance at that decision happening.
And we do the same thing now with our you know, leadership team. Is let's talk through this. We want them to have a seat at the table. We don't want to just tell them this is what we're doing.
Right.
And, and then we'll talk through it and then make a decision on which way we're going to go. And we want to take, I've kind of gotten to the point where it's not just my way anymore. I want to take their advice, especially as they're doing a lot of the operations pieces. So I've learned to put everything together before making a decision. And
what made you learn that? Because I love you said, I've learned to put everything together.
Yeah.
What got you there? Like, what got you to learn that you needed to take everything together?
Yeah. I mean, it's maturity. It's taking coaching from people. It's reading great. You mentioned, Dale Carnegie's book, one of my favorite books I read in my 20s,
And when was that book written?
It was
like 40s, 50s? I don't know.
I think they have an updated version now that at least updates, the payphones
language,
aren't in there and stuff.
language.
Right, yeah. But I think those books can be helpful, but then you have to learn and teach yourself how to be in tune. I call it, integrity in the moment of truth. And so, like, if I make a decision of something that I'm going to do, like, if I commit to something, I'm going to do something, that I actually do it, and even myself. And so showing up in a way that's different, it just takes, self-discipline. And so it's a decision you have to make, and then you have to go after it and really build that muscle.
Yeah, no doubt. That's, and because it does take, I think, bad experiences will really drive you into making different decisions. Mistakes really are where you learn from a lot of times. How is that when you're leading, making a mistake? How do you rebound from that? Like, everyone's seen that was the wrong way to go.
Yeah.
How do you rebound from that?
One of my favorite courses in my MBA program was crisis communication.
Okay.
And you would think of crisis communication as in, like, a war or a fire or, layoffs or whatever. But they taught us, and we actually got to review, like, an example of a communication. Like, for example, when Netflix is deciding to raise your rate, when you read the email, they craft it very particularly to make sure that they, explain it to you in a way that hopefully makes you feel actually okay about this, And so I think the first thing is, when you make a mistake, you have to own it.
Yeah.
But you don't need to linger in it, and you don't need to sit there and offer 100 apologies. You need to own it. And the way that I see it is, you have to also share what impact that had on someone. So, hey, I recognize I wasn't here on time. I recognize that also took up your time, that you could have been doing something else, and it won't happen again. So I'm ready to move forward, And so taking ownership and then deciding how to move past it.
So it's almost the taking ownership, but then somewhat of a making amends.
Right, yeah.
So the apology of like, look, I owned that I was wrong. I also want to apologize how it hurt you.
I would say it's impact, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, how did I impact you? And because when you let someone else know that you understand that your action impacted them, then they're like, it softens them. It takes that cortisol out. You might be mad because you're waiting for me for 10 minutes. And then I'm like, Jason, I'm really sorry about this, and I recognize that I took your time away, and you're like, oh, it's okay, but it's actually showing that. So,
in customer service, that was the one thing I remember telling my staff is that if you just apologize for the mistake, whether we did it or not, like it's hard for somebody to stay mad at you.
Right.
Say, I'm sorry, we're going to fix it, and just set up to fix it. The arguing we lose. Every time we argue with the customer, we lost. Right. Even if we were right, we lost.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm like, it isn't worth it.
Yeah.
It just isn't worth it. Just say you're sorry and move on. That's an interesting thing, though, customer service, right? Today, it feels like, and I don't know if it feels like it's coming back. There are certain places I feel like maybe it's coming back, but then there are times, and I have been, where I just felt like it wasn't where it needed to be. Growing up, at least that's how I learned, and that's how I wanted to train, is that the customer is always right. Even when they're wrong, they're right. And I know that there is still kind of this line that the customer could cross, and I'm sure there's probably a line with me as well. But where do you think customer service is right now in your industry or in our country?
Yeah, and I think what you mentioned, the customer is always right, and that's rule number one. And if not, read rule number 2 and see rule number 1, right?
Right.
And I still think we operate in in doing everything we can. So, in our vision is to, exceed our customers' expectations, give them an experience beyond their expectations. That's our goal. And, we aspire for that every time, but that doesn't mean every customer is going to feel that way, right? Even if we do everything we can. And we have seen changes within customers, and even as a customer, I feel that, right? Because when I contact a company, I can tell if they're customer-centric or if they're not. And a lot of times, companies have had to put up boundaries where the customer is not always right. And I think that because when you look through COVID and through other situations, we've seen that we have this high expectation that we can get anything and everything by yelling and screaming. And unfortunately, there's a lot of violence in restaurants when things don't go right for a customer.
Wow.
And, we've seen many cases of it at McDonald's. You see cases of other times where, a customer will be missing their sauce, or they won't get their burger made right, and they will come back in with, and unfortunately, social media is rampant with videos.
Vitriol.
Showcasing this. So we actually train our employees on de-escalation, on empathy. And then the worst case scenario would be, a situation where you need to have safety because, it is important to take care of our customers. But we also don't tolerate harassment. You see when you walk into almost any establishment now, there's a sign that says, be nice. We don't tolerate people that are that are harassing our employees. And so because there has to be a protection there for them too. I don't think years ago that existed.
I know, that's what I was going to say. What do you think changed that caused that? I mean, do you think we're just in society where maybe the stress levels are so high that my ketchup or my McDonald's sauce or whatever it is isn't put inside the package, or I'm missing a burger, and that's the straw that broke the camel's back for the day?
Yeah.
There was a movie that was like Michael Douglas, I think, did it years ago, where he just lost it. And I can't remember the name of the movie, and if I post it up later, but he just lost it, and he walked around, he just kind of like began this terror campaign through fast food restaurants and different things, and walked through, and he's a normal guy, and his world just, finally the stress hit it, and he just blew up and started, I guess having kind of wreaking violence on the town or something. But
yeah. I mean, without generalizing, I can tell you that, the mental wellness industry in America is through the roof, and really worldwide. So people are seeing a need to see counselors, to get assistance with their mental wellness more than ever. And think about the recovery rooms you have now. There's you don't have just a workout club. You have a full club that's giving you contrast therapy, that's giving you neurological therapy to be able to bring your mindset down, whatever it is. And so you're seeing a very different. So the Calm app, if you do some research on the Calm app or the Pause app, they are doing very well, let's just put it that way, on the app marketplace.
Really?
We never had those before.
Right.
Did we need them before? I don't know, but we need them now.
Or did the apps cause us to have a Pause app and a Calm app?
Right.
Did the phones and the social and the media? I mean, somebody said to me the other day, they said, it doesn't even feel like it's social media anymore. And to that, so there's some truth. I mean, I have thousands and thousands and thousands of friends that I do follow. And I might see a handful of those friends on any given day on my social media app. I don't see them all. I don't know what everybody's doing on there. And I'm sure that some of them are posting, and obviously some of them aren't. I feel like my media, though, that's being algorithm to me is more a need-based media versus a social media. I don't feel it's social at all anymore. I feel it's more what I'm like an interest media. So what I'm interested in, that's the media I'm going to see today. And does that fear of missing out pop in more? Does just this heightened sense of anxiety because my attention span is now 2.7 seconds? What is it?
Yeah. I mean, I think all of those things compound together, right, and create this difference because, I ask, why do we need some of these things? And then I think about the difference of my children growing up with Alexa and Siri and a device, and I look at me, just one generation, my youngest 2 generations away, and I didn't have access to that at all during my adolescence. So it wasn't until, I was in the workforce that I had access to a smart device.
Right.
And no Google, no AI assistant. So now you're seeing that they're growing up in a completely different space, and we'll see what that looks like as the world changes there. But it does impact our consumer interfacing and how we make sure we are able to be there for people when they need us to be.
Yeah, that's I didn't even think of some of those touches that you have with the customer. In our business, our touch was always through traditionally. I mean, not always. There were times where I'm sure our customers confronted, drivers or people on the route, sometimes friendly, sometimes not. But for the vast majority of our customer base, it was a phone call. Mm-hmm. Because your trash, you're not there when it's picked up. You come home, you expect it to be gone. You know.
Yeah.
So we just didn't have it. But yours is complete interface with the customers. But it seems like it's changing. You said it's now delivery and some other options. So did you have any siblings?
Yes, I have 2 younger sisters.
And where are they in do they work inside the organization or did they say this isn't for me?
So my sister Amy, that's 2 years younger than me, she worked in our business for quite a long time, with her husband Steven as well. And they just 2 years ago, I think, they sold out their restaurants. And Steven has done a really cool concept, a gym franchise. Okay. And then my sister is doing interior design. She's actually helping us on some projects of businesses my wife's working on. So yeah.
Okay. Your other sister.
Yeah, my other sister Ashley. Yeah. She's a nurse by trade.
Okay.
She has 4 children right now.
Nothing to do with McDonald's. She didn't want anything to do with it.
Yeah, she hasn't gotten involved.
Did they both work at McDonald's growing up as well too?
A little bit, yeah. Amy did a little bit, and then she went away to school, was a teacher, and then came back. My sister Ashley was mostly focused on her nursing piece.
So you're the oldest,
right?
And the one son.
Correct. Yeah.
Did you find any difference, like growing up? I mean, would you look at your sisters and be like, they're treated like princesses, and I'm getting a little bit of the hard hand?
Well, I don't know if I felt that way necessarily. I think that, I was I like to do a lot of research on birth order now that I have kids and lots of things with working with them. And when I look at like all my nephews are all boys. Well, no, they're not all. I do have some nieces, but the second child of them are all nephews, and they're all similar. Like they all are, great at sports, kind of push the limits a little bit more, very social, and so it's just like a different thing. Me as a firstborn, like I was kind of that typical, like wanted to do the right thing for what mom and dad wanted. Didn't get in a whole lot of trouble. Wasn't naturally great at sports. I ran cross country, did things that I could do. Sure. Excelled in school, those kind of things that I would do. So I wasn't really worried if they were getting, something. But we were on much more of a budget. We moved around a lot when I was a kid because that was when my dad was taking his life savings to buy the McDonald's. And so I had a very different childhood experience probably than my sister Ashley, who was 9 years younger than me.
Interesting. Yeah.
She kind of grew up within being in the McDonald's kind of
already in the organization, starting to have a little bit of success, maybe even. Right. Yeah. Right. No, very interesting. So it could be even just different worlds and understanding that too. Right. When you're coming up, it's we've thought about that often too. That there were times where some of our kids, my youngest daughter essentially grew up in Florida, where my oldest son remembers growing up really in Georgia and moving around a couple times and then finally landing in Florida. Yeah. So he probably feels a little bit more, maybe he likes Florida, but he might even feel a little bit more attached to, he might feel more at, an Atlantan or a Georgian than he would a Floridian. So it's interesting to just see where they were at ages and stages, and they're so different in that aspect. What helped you? I know you read books, you did some other things, but what helps somebody to change and pivot their mindset? If you feel, because you talked about this unstuck sort of thing. Yeah. How do you get unstuck?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great question. I'm actually writing a book on that subject of how do you get yourself unstuck, to be able to get to your greatest ability and to lead with passion. And to me, if you're stuck in a way, it's more about what are you looking for? And so to me, I think the first thing is identifying your purpose. Because if you don't know what your purpose is in life, then how are you going to get unstuck? Because you don't have a why, right? So it's like if you're doing gym membership coaching or you're doing coaching with a trainer, the first thing they ask you is, why do you want to lose weight, or why do you want to build muscle? And if you don't understand that why, you're not going to probably achieve your goal, right? And so to me, I like to understand what's your purpose here. And, for me, I go to God for that, right? What am I, it's through prayer, it's through reflection, it's through reading my Bible to understand what is my purpose, why am I here? And then, go ahead.
So, I don't want to interrupt, but what I want to touch on is this purpose idea, because I like the fact that, and I believe you, I agree with you, that I think purpose is so important. But what do we, because that can almost feel daunting if you're looking at it as a career. Like, what is my purpose? Is my purpose to, flip hamburgers? Is my purpose to, pick up the trash? Is my purpose to, make a lot of money? Like, how would you define it? Like, what would you recommend somebody that if they're saying like purpose, like how broad or narrow should that scope be, and what should that look like?
Yeah. So what I think you just mentioned are goals.
Okay.
I think all those, I don't think my purpose is to run a McDonald's or to flip hamburgers or do anything. I think my purpose is to impact lives in a big way, to help people become their best selves. That's what I believe my purpose is.
Very interesting.
And so I do that through my McDonald's business. I do that through coaching my employees. So I'm a lot looking at it inward facing from my employees. Like I said, if I take care of them, they'll take care of our customers. But I also believe a larger purpose for my organization is to make a bigger impact in our community and in our world. So that means that, how do we help fund, how do we help be part of, charitable organizations or college institutions? How do we help those pieces? So I think that's how I see purpose, is looking at it bigger.
I love that.
And going there. But I think to the unstuck portion, I kind of have a process that you go through to identify by a self-reflection, by saying, what do I think's holding me back? What do I look at and say, this is something that's not allowing me to get there? A very basis would be, some of my employees, what's holding them back is transportation. It's that simple for them. They can't get to work on time because they don't have reliable transportation. So that's very tangible, right? It's not a mindset even, it's just more of a thing they have to figure out. But to solve that, I need them to shift their mindset. So if I'm going to help them, which I've helped a lot of employees, my father's helped a lot of employees get into vehicles, I ask them to read Dave Ramsey's book, right? Because I need you to shift your mindset on how you think about money.
Yeah.
So that we can solve this for the long term.
Yeah, right. Because some of it is just, and financial literacy is something really lacking in our country. And quite frankly, I think that's can be very broad across socioeconomic. It's not just if you grew up with no money, you don't know how to handle money. Even if you grow up with money, you don't know how to handle money.
Right.
Financial literacy is really at an all-time low. I believe statistically it seems to say that too. That and it's, you look at the disparity between incomes, it's really happening.
Right.
So it's interesting that you're saying that's part of like helping to change your mindset, is gaining some financial literacy.
Yeah.
Where should you go? If you've never had anybody show you how to do it, where should you go?
There's a lot of things you can resource, obviously, on the internet now, which makes it pretty easy.
Yeah.
Churches do offer the financial peace course that helps on the very basic level if you're looking for that. Yep. Believe it or not, the investment apps actually have a lot of training for free.
Really?
So like think of a Robinhood, for example. Even Venmo or Coinbase, they have a whole video education series on understanding the markets.
Wow.
So that's next level, right?
Right.
But I think getting on a budget, understanding that, you can even do simple things. Quicken has it now. and they're offering Rocket Mortgage has launched a new app that helps you with this. There are so many resources, and some of the channels I follow on Instagram, give you the actual prompts for ChatGPT or for Claude on tell it exactly what money you make, what your goals are, and it'll build you a plan. So there's more resources that are free
now
more than ever to solve that.
So if you just mentally are unstuck. So finding your purpose was number one, and you find purpose that I want to do something that's bigger than me. Yeah. Self-reflection was another one. How does when you're doing self-reflection though, if you feel like you have it all together, or you feel like you're bathed in self-loathing, how do you get how do you get an objective view of a self-reflection?
Yeah. So, and you're talking about, someone who may be stuck in a really hard place, right? They may be severely in debt. They may have, they may be on financial assistance. They may be going through a, marital relationship challenge, and so depending upon how, or loss of a loved one, but depending upon how far deep they are in there, is where they can figure out how to get out. Because, if you're really deep in there, you've got to do some actual major work to be able to shift that. You can't just say, well, my goal is to open up a home for women, that have had domestic abuse, because you're not even there. You're just trying to make sure you figure out how you live. Yeah. So I go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs of that until we get our basic needs figured out, we can't worry about others.
Oh, that's very good. That's a very great thought. Yeah.
So think of it this way. So for me, I'm in a place where I'm looking at how can I impact my community, and even going bigger potentially to the world, but earlier on I may have just been saying, how do I feed my family? How do I get one step ahead of my business so that I can solve for this? And so you have to get there by changing your mindset, usually with small steps. So it might be one step forward. One of my favorite books is The Compound Effect, and it works in anything in life. And it's a framework that, you can't mess up if you just do it, because, whether you're losing weight, trying to save money, trying to do something with a relationship, everything compounds. And most of the things worth doing in life do not give you instant gratification. So my hard days at McDonald's, many times I wanted just to leave, my heart, and it wasn't even the work, it was actually some of the relational conversations, like you said, within the family, like within my managers, I'm like, I don't need to do this.
Right. I could do anything else in the world.
Right. But sticking with it, 10 and 20 years later, all of a sudden one day you wake up and you're like, look how far I've come, and you didn't even realize what you're doing, It's almost like
it's really tough. Most people don't realize that it can take almost 10 years to really build a business that has real value.
Right.
We saw it in the sanitation industry. People build businesses in 4 years, and they'd get a certain number of customer base, and they'd sell. And then they'd do another business. I saw this one guy in our area. He would build a business 4 or 5 years in. He'd sell it. Then he'd go to maybe another state outside of his non-compete, build that sanitation business up 4 or 5 years, sell it. Then he come back to our area 4 or 5 years later, build it and sell it. And people felt like, man, this guy's so smart and so successful. We stayed in one area for 30 years and we exited one time.
Yeah.
And so it was very interesting because they don't really, what could you have built had you forged ahead? What could you have done had you just said, I'm going to do this for 10, 15, 20 years? Most people don't seem to have that fortitude to do that. So it's interesting you mentioned that longevity in it. What if I had just stuck it out?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it makes a difference for if you can stick with something, and that's not the normal thing, right? You used to see people working for Ford or GM for 20, 30, 40 years, and that they would know, I'm going to do this for that time period.
Yeah.
That's my goal. And now you don't see people, staying in types of things. So we see this very transient workforce.
Yep.
And in some cases that works for people, because if they have a goal and a purpose and they drive towards that, they're going to make it.
Well, I don't know that every company's doing what they used to do. You know, those like my grandfather worked 25 years on the assembly line after World War II on the assembly line for General Motors, and he got a beautiful watch, and he had an incredible pension, you know, a retirement plan through them, and never worked a day after 57 or something of that nature. So, but that I don't know that that's really possible on the assembly line at General Motors or Ford now.
Yeah, you're right. I think that's changed too as far as what the offerings are.
Right.
There's not the same, and maybe with automation, there hasn't been the same need to keep people for that long.
Right. So, well, and I think that people are just maybe coming to that realization that really, if I want to get my bag or I want to get my thing, I might have to jump to different places from time to time. That being. And I'm not saying every company's like that. There are plenty of people, and I know you guys in your organization probably make that as 18, 19 franchises feel more family-owned, and how you're trying to treat people. Like you're working for our organization in this bigger organization, which I think can be is maybe a secret sauce to some of your success.
Yeah.
So I know there's organizations that figure that out, but I think, again, the bigger you are, the further you get away from your customer base, the further you get away from your employees even.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's an issue of scaling, right? Because if you set the right processes in place, that can happen. I mean, I would always get frustrated about that. Like, I don't want to have too many restaurants to where I can't keep my culture present. But with the right people and the right systems, you can. A great example, let's just use Disney, right? When you go to a Disney World park or you go on a Disney cruise ship, and you get that same experience, they're able to do it out at sea.
Yeah.
Right? So if they can do that, then I should be able to do it in my local marketplace.
That's so good.
Now, they charge for it, though. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah. That mouse tax is real.
Right. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So personally, you've had some trials and you've gone through some things. I know you have a blended family now.
Yes.
And so for anyone listening, I mean, you've gone through a loss of a marriage.
Right.
How do you work through that? I mean, how somebody may be listening today, and how do you pick yourself up? And because I can only assume that, and I've talked to a number of people that have, that there's a point in that moment that you feel like a failure. I mean, nobody goes into marriage and says, hey, I hope.
Right.
You got children that are in it, and you worry. I'm sure worry about the impact of this breakup happening. What's that like?
Yeah, so it's challenging, right? Most people would say it's the most challenging thing they go through in their lives, to separate your family and your marriage, and what that looks like, and then to try to rebuild that. Blending wise is also challenging.
Sure.
So for me, the first thing is that. Divorce doesn't define me, right? Okay. So, you don't go around saying I'm divorced, right? You could say that, but it couldn't define me, and so I had to make that decision. And it's extremely emotional. So it takes a very big toll on you for everything else that you're going through, and your kids don't understand it, and your kids are just upset, and they don't see that the forest or the tree. So you have to still be a strong leader for them, right? And they still have to know that they're cared, they're valued, because they don't know what's going to happen, right? They don't know where they're going to live or what's going to happen. So
they're thrown in an uncertainty at an uncertain age.
Right, yeah. So for me, that was, a 6 to 8 year period ago, and it was something that was challenging to work through. But what I would say, the biggest piece is, don't let it knock you down, because you've got to come out on the other side stronger. And then the worst thing you can do is be bitter towards the ex-spouse, because a lot of people 10 years later will still have negative comments to say about their ex-spouse. And the bottom line is the majority of people that go through something as terrible as a marriage breakup end up getting remarried. So someone else finds value in
Someone
your
else finds value, and that's
right.
interesting.
So, our bitterness towards that does not do anybody good and actually causes a tremendous amount of harm upon ourselves.
Well, and your children.
Oh, absolutely. Your children even more so. Right.
Right.
And so for me, I have 6 children now. 4 of them are my biological children.
Okay.
One's in college, one graduates this year. So, I got remarried 2.5 years ago.
Okay.
And, we're having so much fun building our family, learning the ins and outs of how our kids interact. But it's not easy,
No,
and
yeah,
I
because there's
wouldn't say that.
challenges in that, because now you have children coming into your home at different times, and she has children that weren't hers coming into the home.
Right.
That interaction, they now have a blended family of new, step siblings, I guess, so to speak.
Right.
When do you introduce that? When do you introduce them? When you were dating her, how do you introduce that? Do you wait? Is there a time period? Do you go 2 months? Do you go 6 months? And gosh, I can only imagine the anxiousness and the nervousness that your kids had. And did they you put on your Sunday best and say, everybody behave here? How do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely for the kids, you don't want to wait too long, because if they happen to find out, another way, that would be even worse, right? Like they're like, who's this person, dad's?
Probably depending on their age too, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when you're dating someone, you don't know that you're going to marry them, so you don't want to. You don't want to introduce them to 5 different people either.
Right.
So I think that, you want to be right and strategic with that. And so, for me, it was just important to sit them down and let them know that, one, I value them tremendously, my children. And, but I also had to let them know that this wasn't a decision for them to make. It was a decision that I was making, and that they were going to stay, safe and protected, and that, and those kind of things, and then obviously it's integrating that relationship, with my wife now, and how that works. It just takes time, and it has to be handled, the right way.
Time is an interesting thing, because I think it would. I mean, trust is built over time. And
Right.
so, but when you have a newborn child, their trust is built over time, of course, because they may not, obviously, I mean, I can't go back and remember what I was like day one. I can't.
Right.
My mother can.
Right.
But I know that my earliest memories was that I was fed, I was clothed, I was housed, and I was happy,
Yeah.
all because of my mother,
Right.
and my father. And so there was a trust built from 0 to my first memories.
Right.
But then when somebody comes in new, as a stepfather, I'm assuming you would say that it's probably an ongoing process of building trust
Yeah.
with them.
It is. It's an everyday piece, because my wife's 2 biological children are with us full time. And so, I love having them around and getting to talk to them and understand them.
Sure.
At the same time, like, I cannot, when my teenage son says something to me inappropriate, and I have to either pull him aside or literally physically pull him and say, get over here.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that with my bonus kids, because I can't they don't know what else I might do, because they don't have that.
They don't
like
have
you said.
the trust.
So one way I look at this, and it's really an interesting analogy, is I've attended a lot of soccer games in my life.
Okay.
And I sometimes will stay before or after my kids' soccer games and watch another team, right? Because they find interest, or they might have a friend of the team.
Sure.
And you can do this with really any sport. You might go to a football game and you might go with a friend and you don't really care who wins. But when your child is on that team and another child, slide tackles them, and your child looks like they might be hurt, more of a minor injury. We're not talking about a big injury, but
Sure.
And you hear some of the parents of their children that got hurt, and they are like, yelling at the ref, like, how could you let this? That kid should be yellow carded. They're just like going crazy, right? Because their child got injured.
Sure.
And then guess what happens 5 minutes later? their child decides, you know what, I'm going to slide tackle and or do something else. Again, these are not
Right.
super egregious.
Yeah.
And the same parent is cheering that their child did that.
Good tackle.
Right? And you're like, you are so biased, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But guess-
Subjectivity. Yeah.
but God gave that to us.
Sure.
That bias for our children. Because even though our children, we might have a child that really goes wayward, that will never change my love for that child. And God gave that to me. And
Yeah.
so when you're blending a family, you have to build that, because I don't have that same natural, and my wife doesn't have that same natural piece there.
That is a great thought and a great bit of advice to see that and to understand that,
Yeah.
that you're building that.
Right. Yeah.
You have it
exactly.
naturally for your children,
Right.
and you gain it,
Yes.
with the bonus children.
Right.
Wow. Well, your tribe, I'm always defending my tribe.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm ready to go to battle
Yeah.
for them,
Yeah.
for sure. That's a great insight.
Yeah.
So what's next for you, David?
Yeah, so we got a lot of things going on in my family. We're excited about continuing to build. This area is growing, so we're still building more McDonald's restaurants. Still super committed to that brand for McDonald's. I'm writing this book, and I'm making a whole framework around it. Working on a podcast as well myself. That's going to be all about good to golden. And
Okay.
you think about Jim Collins' book Good to Great, and a fantastic book. To me, I started this year kicking it off with my team for our mantra of our goal is to go from good to golden. We have a lot of good things happening in our organization, but I want us to be golden. I want us to be giving that great customer experience, to be able to grow our business, to be able to be what our customers need. And like you said, I want them to feel a difference when they come into a Costa family McDonald's. That's
great.
my goal.
Yeah.
So my book is kind of written to my employees, but it will be available to anyone, and I just want to make it my platform of how to help anybody understand that there are things they can do that they may not be seeing, maybe a blind spot for them that they can uncover, that can just unlock this amazing greatness for them. And I'm starting with my employees and then extending it on.
That's
and then
great.
with that, my wife, loves ministering to the community. And so she's had a coffee shop for a long time, MJ's Place. And we were able to buy the building that her coffee shop was in a couple years ago.
Okay.
And so now we're turning that into Costa Union Club. And so she's running Costa Union Club as a community hub and as the new version of MJ's Place, where we'll have a studio there for people. We'll have places of connection, places of prayer and wellness. And, I'm going to have a little area there where that can be for men. There can be men's groups from Bible studies to bourbon tastings, I'm calling it, And
All right.
So so that's kind of a passion project for my family, what she's working on, and I'm continuing on in my journey of developing leaders, cultivating new leaders, and giving back to our community, while at the same time we're traveling, and helping our kids be the best they can be.
Man, I love that. I love this kind of, I call it like a 360 version of business, where you're focused on your business, but you're also focused on the world around you.
Yeah.
And I think great entrepreneurs do that. I love the fact that you're in such a massive organization at McDonald's, that you're also working inside that corporate area so that they hear from the boots on the ground. But what I love about it is you guys are a family-owned business, and I don't think people really see that there's a difference when you step into that business.
Yeah.
That you guys are doing things maybe different than other franchisees even in McDonald's are doing. Do you guys gain any of that? Like, share any of that information with others? And do you see other franchisees doing the things you're doing?
Yeah, so we actually have the chance to be able to go and talk to other franchisees about some of the practices that we have specifically around our people, what we offer them. So at a recent marketing meeting, actually, we shared an entire framework of what we do for our people. And just to help others, also just for the greater good of our McDonald's system, right?
Yeah.
And that's my role on the NFLA People Officer as well, is to help share out what's working and what we can do. So we call it an employee value proposition. What makes it valuable to work with us. And one of the things that we do, like for our general managers, for example, is they get a 5-week sabbatical after 5 years.
Wow.
And then another, every 5 years they get 5 weeks off. And they can take it all at once if they want to go, travel or whatever. And so we try to do things that you don't see always in the restaurant industry to help them be able to achieve what they can do holistically in life. Another thing that's cool is we partnered with a wellness coaching company that we've done. It's optional, obviously, for our managers, but we've said, hey, if you want this year, we're going to pay for you to have full wellness coaching so that you can be your best self. Because I'm a big believer that you can't be your best self at work if you're not your best self at home. And there's some things you can do to put that in place. So we want to help you be your best self completely.
I love it. I love that you guys are also helping people lift up. I love that you're pouring into others. This Unstuck, I mean, I really love that idea. Our country will be better because of entrepreneurs that pour into others first.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the key to it. I mean, there's a lot of bad examples of entrepreneurs being super selfish, taking it all for them.
Yeah.
I think the idea that, like you said, if you take care of your people, they take care of you.
Yeah.
That concept's still true,
Right.
still works, and we should still apply it.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. Yeah.
So, Dave, this has been a great conversation. I mean, we've really kind of toured through McDonald's. Maybe there, you may get some McDonald's might have some new part-time employees or whatnot coming in and saying there might be a career or whatnot out of this conversation, and giving McDonald's another look. One of the things, last question I want to ask you, if you could go back and tell your 20 to 25-year-old self, if you could, a discipline, a practice, an attitude change, a shift, a mindset, whatever it is, if you go back and say, hey, I'm applying this to my life today, I wish I'd started it then.
Yeah.
What would that be?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the way I look at it is going back to some of those mindset pieces, because I think I was so one-track minded in just to figuring out how I could develop myself as a leader and grow my company. And then once you do that, you're like, okay, now what's next, right? And so if I were to go back, it would be in being a little bit holistic in my time of how do I ensure that I'm able to give to those around me and to also be there when my kids need me the most in certain things, and also being able to apply some of those principles that I've learned in the world to that. So, I feel like that I was in tune to growth all the time. And, when I talk to people, I ask, how are you growing every day? Because to me, I believe if you're not growing, you can't stay stale or stagnant. So it means you're probably sliding backwards in some way, in some shape of your life. So I was so focused on that growth, but on the business side, where I think maybe if I took a little inward look and focused just on me holistically growing and using my business as one of the vehicles, not the main one, that I may have been able to, work some things in a way that would have turned out that could help me in a different way.
Interesting. Yeah, no, that's really good advice. Sometimes I think I've heard it said to do a helicopter look at your life,
Yeah.
And maybe you need to do this every year. Some need to do this every 6 months. Some could go, 2 or 3 years without it. But being able to do a helicopter, get outside of yourself, look down and just kind of piece it together. Like what am I missing? And sometimes it takes an outside look.
It does. That's a hard thing to be able to do. You have to have a high emotional intelligence to
Sometimes you need
that.
sometimes you need a mentor.
Yeah, you got to be able to receive feedback from people that you may not want to hear, but you may not even believe, but that will help you understand that. And it takes a lot of humility, but again, that will unlock a lot if you can figure that out and be okay with that. And so it's a great point.
Get you unstuck.
Right, exactly.
David Costa, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. It's been awesome.
I look forward to seeing all the stuff coming your way.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so
Definitely.
much, buddy.
Yes.